Good Thursday afternoon. Welcome to a football show. My name is Braden Gall. He is Zach Lyons, and we are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group, two award-winning, awesome, locally owned companies. We do appreciate it. Back live in our normal time slot. Good to be back after talking with Feinbaum callers for the better part of a week and a half. I can't wait to talk to you in the comment sections, and you too, Zach, also. So make sure you jump into the comment section if you have any questions. We are going to rank the AFC defensive units in the AFC South, and of course the head coaches as well. Maybe give you some predictions on the worst and most interesting and maybe okay storylines coming out of SEC Media Days as the entire Southeastern media throng descends upon Nashville next week. So we got a lot of stuff to do, a lot of great shows out there, content out there, stackingtheinbox.com, F-Words Pod, all the other great pods from the 440 Sports Network as well. We'll tell you more about Sinkers and Kingston Group momentarily. Zach, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Doing good. I'm actually making my rankings right now. So, but they'll be ready by the time we get to that section.
I do appreciate your commitment and work ethic to the show. We do appreciate it. So, no, if you want to get involved, please rate, review, subscribe to the show. Tell somebody about it. We had some really big growth over the course of the last couple of weeks, and we really appreciate you guys even taking some time off. We know there's a bunch of new viewers, so we really appreciate you guys. Tell somebody about the show. Tell somebody about football and other F-words. I have some responses to you and Mike Herndon's episode this week, so make sure you go check out that episode. And make sure you read Stacking the Inbox as well. Sinkers Beverages, award-winning, number one liquor store in the city in 2022. It's not an opinion, Zach. It's not your opinion. It's not my opinion.
It's award-winning. It's got awards. All
right there.
That.
It's right there. Wow. It's right there.
It's flowing out of their ass. There's awards everywhere.
Sinkers went and ate nothing but oysters for 3 days, and just awards came pouring out. All right, so go check them out. Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages, of course, and the booze will be delivered directly to your house.
They drive so you can drink.
There you have it. And, of course, great selection of all kinds of really cool stuff. They taught me how to make a new tequila drink. They found me and my wife a brand new tequila. Now, I'm a brown water guy. I'm a vodka guy. Normally, I like beer occasionally, maybe a mimosa every now and then. But I don't really drink a lot of other liquors. But my wife really likes tequila, but she wants a good quality mixed drink. And we walked in there, and my man, Grant, he goes, listen, let me take you to this one particular tequila. It's $24 for a liter. That's perfect. It's not too expensive. Yeah. You can drink it on the rocks, or you can make a mixed drink out of it. So now I have a tequila that I can go to, thanks to Sinkers. Kingston Group as well. BuildKG.com is the website. Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm, owned and operated by a Nashvilleian, a former SEC football player as well. So it's all in the family here. It's all in the family. So just make sure you check out Kingston Group. If you're going to do any big renovations, make any big decisions about your house, you know the drill, folks. Talk to the Kingston Group. So I want to give you a chance to promote Stacking the Inbox. Really interesting stuff on analytics and data and the Titans and how it affected this team in the past. So make sure you go check that out. Really good stuff by you this week, by the way. Just wanted to say, tip of the cap.
Thank you. It's my favorite article series of the year that I typically do around this time. Basically, just diving into the analytics presented into Sharp Football. Some of the analytics that I can go and find out to complement what Sharp Football puts out. But essentially, if the Titans had an analytics department, like maybe even a 3-man analytics department with someone in the office or building that had the gumption or balls to present the data to Mike Vrabel, because I'm sure the one little guy they have stuck away in a broom closet is probably just too timid to even. He probably looks like Gollum at this point. He just doesn't even come out of his office. They probably have forgotten he's in there. I hope they have found that guy and let him out wherever he is.
He's looking at like run first success rate on first down,
but he's
just like. And he's like, my precious.
He's just too timid to go in there and say, hey, look, guys, I know it's week 7, but here's everything that we've accumulated at the bye week. Please stop running the football. We know that Derrick Henry is on paper the best player on the field for your team on offense, but it's just not working because I'll tell you right now, if you put him out there 84% of the time, they're going to stack the box. It doesn't even matter if you run or pass. Basically, and I agree with Warren Sharp, and I wish I would have thought of this, but I have to credit it to him. Basically, They are already planning to stack the box on first down when they see the Titans schedule name on their schedule. That's what opposing defenses are doing.
Which is appropriate because the name of the website is
There you go.
stackingtheinbox.com.
It worked very well this year.
So go sign up. Really great stuff. F-Word Spot was great. I did watch. So you guys talked a lot about a lot of different things. Vol Twitter, namely, and we're gonna at one of my storylines later on for SEC Media Days. I think Joe Milton, who's going to be here in Nashville, I think people that don't know anything about him and haven't covered him and haven't watched him, I think he's going to come out of Media Days as like, I'll save it for later. I think it's going to be it's going to be quite annoying. Let's just leave it at that, and we'll get to that later. But one of the things that you mentioned is that I guess players on NFL Network, is that right, are just getting to pick to watch a bunch of games. And you guys were talking about it, and I actually saw the same player, Amon-Ra St. Brown, picked one of
must be Amon-Ra St. Brown week or something.
I don't know. So I was getting ready to do the show yesterday, and he picks, and I put on NFL Network and I put on SEC Network. Those are like the two channels I keep it on normally. And it was like the Packers Seahawks 2014 NFC Championship game where the Packers lose on an onside kick. And I was down in Florida with my parents and my then girlfriend and my brother, and like we were all in a little condo, and it was one of the worst nights, one of the biggest fights I've ever had with my girlfriend. Nothing to do with her at all. It worked out. We have 2 kids and we've been married 10 years, but it was just one of those nights where like I just remember how terrible the game was. So anyway, I heard you guys talking about it, and I started thinking, because you asked Mike, if you had control and you could pick a game, which game would it pick? And you guys rattled off so many great ones that I immediately thought of too. And the Super Bowl I can't put the Super Bowl on there. I don't feel like that's fair, because like if you got to go to the Super Bowl, it's clearly the most memorable. But like I don't want to.
And they do replay their Super Bowl games like every so often.
So, and you said that about the Music City Miracle. It's like everyone thinks of that. Everyone thinks of that one. And I know you rattled off so many great and interesting games that you'd actually been in attendance for. I was there for the Derrick Henry 99-yard touchdown run game against Jacksonville. Yep. That would be near the top of my list. I think number one for me, and I wanted to see what you think about it, because Mike said the 99 AFC Championship game is probably the biggest win in franchise history, and that's probably accurate. I think the playoff win on the road against Kansas City, where Derrick Henry that was like one of Derrick Henry's like coming into his own as a starter. He wasn't really fully the starter yet, but he just went bonkers in that game. Mariota had the pass. They were on the road. They were an underdog. They hadn't been in the playoffs in years. I was out at a bar with a bunch of buddies watching that game. Like that was one, and so much more entertaining than the Patriots beating the Patriots in Foxborough and beating the Ravens, where the game had to be played like in a broom closet for them to win. I think the Kansas City win on the road is one of the most entertaining, memorable, and important games in modern Titans history, and it's the one that comes to my mind. I don't know if I
were ranking the playoff games like of the last, of the Malarkey Vrabel era, I guess you could say the more modern era, I'd probably put the Ravens win as number one, and then I would do that Chiefs game that you're talking about, because I think the Ravens win. There's so much drama, so much involved, and then
Earl Thomas
just come out. I mean, like they just come out at the beginning, and Ryan Tannehill puts them up with 2 beautiful touchdown passes. Yep. You got one cheek, and you're in. One cheek equals 2 feet with Jonnu Smith.
What a great!
He puts them up. Ryan. People forget Ryan Tannehill puts them up so much that they are able just to beat the dog piss out of the Ravens, from on the ground with Derrick Henry and on defense, because they could just pin their ears back because Ryan Tannehill and the passing offense built a huge lead for them right at the beginning.
I agree. So it was my brother-in-law's wedding that night, and he's a big Titans fan. All of his groomsmen are Titans fans, and so we're all downstairs at the venue. Well, like they've already had the ceremony, and the game hasn't started yet. So they've already had the ceremony, and like all the groomsmen, there's like 10 groomsmen, and like me and a couple other the bridesmaids are all like, no, we're gonna go downstairs. Like during the reception, we're all downstairs, and I had to take the kids home, and I was like, honey, I'll take them home. I'll take the 5 and this at the time maybe like a 4 and a 3-year-old or whatever it was, a 2 and a 3-year-old. I was like, I'll take them back home, and I left at halftime basically. took the kids home, got them in bed, and was sitting on the couch at the start of the third quarter. Didn't miss any of it. And I remember that one was more entertaining than the Patriots win. The Patriots win was just so ugly, but like still really important and great.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs game, if you asked me to sit down and rewatch one, which one I'd find the most entertaining, I think it would be either the Ravens or the Chiefs are the top two. But I just think the Chiefs game was like Derrick Henry I think he had 155 yards in that game.
Yeah,
like just an absolutely nuts game. The one I want to point out too, and I want to see what you think, that I just thought from a pure entertainment standpoint, and it turned out to decide actually who was the 1 seed. And the Buffalo Josh Allen slip at the goal line where they both just went up and down the field scoring points. The Titans couldn't stop Allen, but the Bills couldn't stop the Titans, and they just went back and forth and back and forth and up and down and up and down. And then on the goal line, last second of the game, like you slip and Jeffrey Simmons punches him in the face, and like the game's over. And I was
coming off the COVID,
like in the middle
crisis.
of the COVID scandal. Yeah, like I just thought that one was absolutely one of the most memorable. And then I was at the Green Bay Marcus game in 2016.
Yeah.
Wearing different colors, but my daughter was like 5 weeks old, and my wife will tell you that's the most memorable Titans game she's been to, because she was breastfeeding in the behind the what are those little doll houses down there?
Oh yeah.
That's where the room is for moms to go, and it's like a stone closet at Nissan Stadium that's like the worst place in the world to be. She's like, I can't believe you made me go to that game. I was like, Maren needed to go to her first Packers game when she was 5 weeks old. Like, she needed to do it. And DeMarco Murray had a huge game. Titans absolutely dominated that day. So
yeah. I mean, it was a crazy game, that Green Bay game. That was actually, I think, that game. It was either that game or the Seattle game. I can't remember which one it was, but that was one of the first times that me and Lebowski did our podcast like in front of our friends in a tailgating parking lot.
Oh,
and stuff.
Pressure, huh?
Yeah, so it was like one of the very first times.
That's cool. That's really cool. It was that was an absolute party in the building. Like they got up early, the Titans did, and people were just going bananas the whole game. It was just one of those moments where you just remember it being like a frat party for the entire day. And it was just a ton of fun. So I thought I'd throw a few out there because I thought that was a really good conversation by you guys. If you want to hear Mike Herndon's and some other conversation, go check it out. I did watch 2 episodes of The Quarterback on Netflix, which is the new documentary. It's solid. It's good. I know you guys were talking about it, and I just wanted to say I've watched 2. The wife's in on it because she wants to learn about Patrick Mahomes' wife, which is all she cares about. But it's good. It's interesting. Marcus is, I don't know. Marcus is such a good dude and such a likable guy, and I know Titans fans don't like him that much, maybe, but like I just think I've liked him since his college years. I just think he's such a good dude. So
yeah,
that's
good dude, not a great quarterback.
No, but you said the same thing about Jake Locker on the episode, and I was like, that's a
good dude, not a great quarterback.
But
that
Marcus
seems to be the Titans MO.
Yeah, right. But Marcus is a far better quarterback than Jake Locker, just for the record.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I didn't say he wasn't.
All right. You want to start with coaches? You want to rank the coaches first? So I think this was pretty easy, but I want you to rank your top 4. You in the AFC South, we're going to do all AFC South rankings here, defensive unit rankings, and then we'll talk a little SEC media days. But the head coaches in the AFC, it's sort of similar to quarterbacks for me in that it was very easy to do. Who you got?
Vrabel, Peterson, D'Amico Ryans, Shane Steichen.
I don't even know how to spell Steichen's last name, but that's exactly the order I have. I don't know how you can have any other order. I think Vrabel and Peterson are clearly the top 2. I think Vrabel is clearly the best coach. I think D'Amico Ryans has more upside, and I'm more interested and more confident in D'Amico Ryans than Indianapolis. Shane Steichen.
I have no faith in Shane Steichen.
I have no clue. I don't have any idea. If you told me he was good one day or terrible one day, I'd be like, okay. Like, D'Amico Ryans is interesting.
It's interesting. I can't remember who was talking about it, but I saw someone say, "Oh, it's interesting that Patrick Mahomes spends more time with Matt Nagy than Eric Bieniemy on the sidelines." Well, he's the quarterback's coach. It's what he does. And let me tell you something: is that if you go and listen, if you had subscribed to stackingtheinbox.com and read my piece about Brian Brian Johnson, the quarterback's coach of the Eagles, that Jalen Hurts' productivity went through the roof when they brought him out from the top, because he was in the booth, down to the sidelines, because what was happening is that Jalen Hurts, the offensive coordinator, is typically game planning with the head coach during the breaks while the defense is on the field. You may see some go and like relay some messages, but they spend most of their time talking to each other. So when Brian Johnson was brought down and he was able to spend a lot of time with Jalen Hurts, it's when you saw Jalen Hurts turn it around. And that's when you saw that basically he was over to the side, basically being the offensive coordinator for the quarterback. Like he's telling him what to see, what to look for, doing all the game film. So I'm not surprised by that. But this all goes to Shane Steichen, who couldn't handle both jobs. There are offensive coordinators that can handle all that stuff and multitask, but he couldn't, and his offense could not run efficiently when he could. Now he's in charge of a team where he has to multitask various things. I just have no faith in him as a head coach. And I think that Chris Ballard is going to get the brunt of the blame for their struggles this season, the Colts' struggles this season. And I'll be very glad that he's gone. And I think he's rightfully has accumulated so much goodwill. He's deserved some negativity by people. But really, Shane Steichen should go as well. I feel like at some point, you just have to do this kind of like reset where you bring in a GM, bring in a head coach who are on the same page. Do not saddle one without the other.
Well, generally, you would always go GM first. And then if the GM evaluates the coach, it's his decision to make. Like that's generally what you would do. And this guy's been handpicked by Ballard. Now, I think the whole power structure is odd because Irsay is a weird owner too, and Ballard is a weird GM right now. He had a couple of nice wins early, like Robinson, and then it's kind of trailed off and hasn't done a whole lot in terms of building the roster. We'll find out if Anthony Richardson is the right pick, and I guess we'll find out if Shane Steichen is the right coach. I do find it interesting to your point about interacting on the sidelines. Like the guys that do it and they do it kind of quickly are the head coaches who call plays, right? Like when they're the same person, that guy is a lot of times talking to the quarterback as he comes off the field, but then quickly has to move on to like managing the rest of the game. So I just don't know anything. I have a 0% confidence in saying anything about Shane Steichen. I don't have any. Literally anything could happen with him, and I would not be surprised because I just don't have any strong feelings. Whereas if D'Amico Ryans failed, I would be pretty surprised by that.
I think there's a good chance, and it sounds weird for a first-year head coach, but there's a good chance D'Amico Ryans could be in the talk for Coach of the Year if he turns this thing around like immediately in year one. Like, how do you not put that guy in the conversation for Coach of the Year? I mean, he's already highly regarded and highly respected. I really hate that D'Amico Ryans with the Texans. I just absolutely hate it. I hated it when they drafted him because D'Amico Ryans is like an all-time Alabama player for me. So I hated it when they drafted him, and I hate that he just kind of never could find his way to Tennessee. Obviously, there's no connections to Tennessee, but they did have a defensive coordinator position open, and they had all this stuff to try to get him there. I just wish it would have came to. I wish they would all connected together to bring him over here, and I hate that he went to the Texans.
He's Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I could totally see a situation where the Texans, somehow get like a close to a winning record, and people are like, I don't know, you got to get D'Amico Ryans some credit. He could be in Coach of the Year conversation this year. I also think that there's a highly plausible, likely scenario where we're doing this time next year, and we're saying Vrabel's 1, D'Amico Ryans is 2, and Peterson is 3.
I think it might take 2 years, but I agree with you that it won't take long. Like yeah. I think in theory, 1 or 2 years, I think D'Amico Ryans could be there. The question is like Coach of the Year conversation, which I don't honestly care that much about who wins it actually, because it's never given to the guy who necessarily did the best coaching job. It's always given to the guy who kind of did the most unexpected, or in Vrabel's case, like kind of did the most with the least due to the injuries. I think 7 wins. If they go 8 and 9, I would say he's absolutely a top 3 finalist for Coach of the Year. Yeah. 7 wins, and he might be in the conversation. But if they get to 8 wins, he's like, I think he wins the award at that point. Like
that's how I am. And I know that sounds
agree.
crazy for an 8-win. You just have to understand how atrocious the Texans were these last few years for those that may not be watching the Texans. And then you kind of have to understand that, like, it's still a mishmash of players, new players, old players. Like, it would be pretty remarkable. The difference with Mike Vrabel was, Mike Mularkey went 9-7. Then here comes Vrabel. He goes 9-7.
Right.
You take a team and make them competitive and have some good wins on that resume. I don't know. He's got a lot of love in the community too. Like not the media community, the voting community for these awards. That it would, I just see that it would be very easy for him to be liked and for him to want to be voted on as long as he gets to like a respectable 8 or 9 wins.
Yep. AVing says he's watching episode 4 of The Quarterback, which is the Titans, where Mahomes has a lot of respect for Vrabel and the Titans. I would assume, since Mahomes has played some of his worst games against Mike Vrabel's defenses.
Almost lost last year.
He did get to Malik Willis. Of course, reminder, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, always here. Go to Sinkers, use the Kingston Group. I think what's interesting about Doug Peterson is I think he just kind of is what he is. He's solid. He's okay. He's never going to be elite. He's never going to be terrible. But you think he is what he is, and right now that's better than an unknown, a coach that's never coached before. I think DeMeco. I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I think DeMeco Ryans, if he accomplishes what we think he's going to accomplish, which in my mind, he's another version of Mike Vrabel, then he goes in a year, 2 years, 3 years fairly quickly as Doug Peterson just stays where he is. DeMeco Ryans goes from behind to ahead pretty quickly, and that would be also my prediction. I know if you're a diehard Jags fan, I guess you tout the Super Bowl, but I think everybody knows on a day in, day out, unit by unit, development, leadership, everything. Like we
just
know.
Look at Week 18.
We know Mike.
I don't know what to tell you. Week 18 should tell you everything about what Mike Vrabel can do as a coach. You can look at that Chiefs game as well, but what he can do may not always result in wins, but what he can do with less. He could do more with less than any other coach in the NFL, in my opinion.
And I don't disagree at all. Hello, Diesel. How you doing? Good to see you. Welcome to the comment section there. And so Vrabel, Peterson, Ryans, Steichen with Vrabel at the top there. And I think it would take a lot. I mean, Peterson would have to get to like an AFC championship game or get to another Super Bowl for him to jump Vrabel, I think. So
he would have to continue to beat Vrabel in my mind.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Okay, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, go there. Okay, let's get into the defense now. I want to. I think we'll wrap up the conversation with overall defense, and we can kind of do that quickly at the end. But I wanted to start with. I'm going to start with the defensive backs for a second.
Okay, so are we doing cornerbacks and safeties or just cornerbacks?
I was going to do So I have secondaries, defensive lines, and linebackers. The 3 layers, the 3 tiers of the. Let me tell you what Pro Football Focus did, so I can tell you how I think they're wrong. How about that? And while you do some work over there, they had the secondaries ranked heading into the season in the AFC South as follows: the Tennessee Titans 26th, the Jacksonville Jaguars 27th, the Houston Texans 28th, and the Indianapolis Colts 31st. And when you start to look at the groups of players playing in the secondary, and I think you said this to Mike on F Words, one of the position groups that is the deepest and most versatile on the entire roster, if not the deepest and most versatile position group on the Titans roster, is the secondary. They may not have an elite number 1 like Derek Stingley might be eventually for the Texans, but they have an all-pro safety, a damn good second safety, and 4 quality corners who can move around and play different positions. I would have Tennessee as the number 1.
Technically, their depth behind those 4 is still good because they're all versatile as well.
Yes,
I know it sounds crazy because traditionally the pass defense has been one of the weaker aspects of it. But if you're looking, you should go look at the fucking AFC South depth charts. I mean, I know you have, but it's not good. But they're better than the rest. I mean,
they're number 1.
Yeah,
They are the number one. They're the number one secondary in the division.
Yeah, I think the Texans Jags is kind of hard, right? Because like the Jaguars have nobody as a safety that I'm even heard of, I feel like. And the Texans have Stingley and Jalen Petrie
and Jimmy Ward now. So
and Jimmy Ward. So I put the Texans at 2
that's what I have.
hesitantly because I do like the Jaguars cornerbacks of Trey Herndon and
Tyson Campbell.
And then I have a clear fourth. Like for me, it's clearly the Titans are the best in the secondary. And that's wild to say, but it does not mean they're the best in the NFL. It just means that they're better than the trash heap that is the rest of the AFC South in this particular position. Clearly. And then I think like Texans and Jags, I think you can make arguments, swap those around however you want.
I agree.
And then the Colts are clearly the worst.
That's exactly what I have. Now, again, PFF, for what it's worth, I'm just using it as a benchmark so we can have the conversation off of that. They have them all ranked 26th or worse. So number one, that tells me that Ryan Tannehill, two rookie quarterbacks, and Trevor Lawrence should have some opportunities to make some plays. Traylon Burke should have some opportunities to make some plays. I would not have Tennessee at 26. I think they're number one in the division. I'd probably have them at like 19, 20, 21. I think the personnel is better than the past defensive numbers. And I don't think that's a function necessarily of I guess that's a function of a lot of things. Injuries is number one. But I would lean Houston because I think they have more high-end talent. Like Derek Stingley and Tyson Campbell are sort of a wash there, right? But I think Stingley's a little better. Campbell had a really great year last year. I think the safeties are better at Houston. Otherwise, I think Houston's a slight nod. But I think all three, Jacksonville, Houston, and Indianapolis, are three of the worst bottom third in the NFL. Yeah. And the Colts might be the worst secondary in the NFL.
I would be very surprised if the Colts aren't the worst secondary in the NFL. And that's a good thing for the Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis, Malik Willis, whoever may be starting because of injury. I mean, it's atrocious. They got rid of one of their starting corners, and then I didn't know that Julius Brent's nickname was Juju, which if it is, that's a bad sign. And it seems like a name change going from rookie. As a rookie, that's not good. And I like
the name change went so well for Darius Leonard / Shaquille Leonard.
Yeah. That's the thing to me is like Julius Brents and what's his name? Darius Rush could be good secondary players, but not year one. And that's what they're going to be relying on a lot is these rookies. I mean, you're talking about Julius Brents, and they have Dallas Flowers.
And then is that a person?
I don't know. I've never heard of him. And then they have Kenny Moore,
Rodney Thomas, Julian Blackman. Who are these people?
Yeah, like Julian Blackman is okay, but he's not going to be like, I don't know. I just find it to be, it's atrocious. It's one of the worst. Like it's like to me, it's like looking at the wide receivers for the Tennessee Titans. This is like, oh, this is bad.
Oh,
I think very bad.
I think it might be even worse. I think the Tennessee Titans wide receiver group is far more interesting and talented than the Colts secondary.
There could be. Listen, I like Darius Rush and I like Julius Brents, but we'll see how they all fit together. Maybe they're really good by week 12, but sometimes too little, too late.
So let's stay. I want to go to the defensive line. And I'm doing this strategically because I think it's clear that the Titans have the best collection of players. Again, the past numbers last year didn't play that out, but I think clearly 1 to let's say 8 or 9, they have the best collection of defensive backs in the division. But I think pretty clearly, I think there's some elite upside talent with Tyson Campbell and Derek Stingley that might be better than anybody the Titans have. But as a group, there's nobody, in my opinion, that's close to the Titans. I think while there is some really, really good players at the defensive line position, I think the exact same thing is true for the defensive line. The difference being they also have the best player in Jeffrey Simmons. But if you include anybody who lines up along the defensive line, I think it is very clearly the Tennessee Titans have the best defensive line of anybody in this division as well.
Well, you also need to clarify what you're talking about. You are saying defensive. You are including defensive line and the outside linebackers as one group.
I am. I understand if that's people don't rank him that way. I look at Harold Landry, and yes, that he occasionally drops into pass coverage around the goal line, and Arden Keep likes to play in a 2-point stance. But I think we can discuss who has a better pass rush. I think that's fair if you want to sort of separate pass rush, but it's so hard to. It's so hard because you're going to play with 4 or 5 down linemen almost every single play for all these teams, and it's hard to for me. It would be the same answer, honestly. Like if it's Autry, Tart, and Simmons, that's number 1 in the division. If it's Autry, Simmons, Tart mixed with Landry and Key and Weaver, I still think that's number 1 in the division.
And I agree with both those words. I just want to make sure that our listeners, the rankings, listeners know that we are including the outside linebackers with the defensive line. And I agree. I have it Titans. I did Titans, Jags, Texans, Colts, and I think it's like, this is the most. I think this is the closest that it is. And I almost put the Texans above the Jaguars because of their defensive line. But I think that you do have to give a little bit of credence to Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, even though, man, I really struggled with that. I really struggled after everything by the Titans on this particular category because I just couldn't decide. I have a lot of erase marks and everything. I couldn't decide, so I just went with my gut and went Jags, Texans, Colts. I just, the Colts have I think one of the most underrated defenders in the league in Grover Stewart. But other than that, I'm just not too sold on anybody else that they have.
So I'll start with what I agree with you on, and then we can go to what we disagree on. Jacksonville and Houston, I struggled as well. Like I went back and forth. I think if Will Anderson is a superstar, and Jerry Hughes plays most of the season, I think they have they don't have a bunch of other stars, but they've got a lot of quality starters. I just don't know about Allen and Walker and Hamilton and some of these other guys for Jacksonville. So I'm with you. I kind of went back and forth. If you look at Pro Football Focus, again, just using it as a baseline, not saying we agree or disagree with them, they had the Titans as the number 10 defensive line in the NFL. They had the Colts at 18, and they had Jacksonville and Houston at 21 and 23, so basically the same. So they're kind of agreeing with us on Jacksonville and Houston. And here's what brings us back to the Colts, which is where I have them at 2. Not as high as 18.
They just don't have any edge rushers.
I think Kwity Paye is going to have a good season. I like Kwity Paye. So
I'll see it when I believe it. I'll believe it when I see it.
If you told me I could have Kwity Paye or Trayvon Walker, I might take Kwity Paye.
I would probably agree. I'd probably agree with you, even though I do not like his injury history with Kwity Paye. But I just never believed in Trayvon Walker to begin with. I thought he's completely overrated. But
Buckner and Stewart is a really good interior tandem.
Yeah, Kwity Paye's maybe if Kwity Paye was on a different team, I'd think differently of him. Man, that's really hard. I feel like the Colts, Texans, Jags are very close.
I agree.
So, that's where I have the issue is that, you look at DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, and you're like, man, that's a damn good defensive tackle duo. And then you look at Kwity Paye, who can't stay healthy. And then you go and turn around and look at their other guy right now, Samson Ekebom, which is who they just picked up. So they've already downgraded a lot of their players. Now, listen.
Well, the Colts fans will tell you that's a huge upgrade on, was it Ngakoue?
But who had 9.5 sacks, by the way. And people are really overrating that. And it happened yesterday while we were talking on football and other F words, really overrating the rush defense aspect of Yannick's game.
That's what I'm saying. Colts fans think they upgraded from Ngakoue.
We'll see when your pass rush is in there. Now, listen,
I agree.
They got 8 aid. So they got Ada Tuima, Ada Bawar. And he's one of my favorite players in the draft. So maybe he just goes crazy like we all thought and all that. I just can't get past their edge group. Whereas the Texans, I almost want to put them second over the Jags because I love Will Anderson so much. He's
Yeah,
so pro
yeah, yeah.
ready. D'Amico Ryans is another factor in how I kind of view this defense. So I view Will Anderson, Sheldon Rankins,
That's
Malik
fair.
Collins, Jonathan Greenyard a little bit different because you have over there D'Amico Ryans.
I'm willing to go. I'm willing to go Houston over Jags because of that too.
Yeah. That's
I could do
it.
that.
I think I'm still going to keep the Jags there because the Jags did prove that they can rush the passer and get at you. We haven't seen the Texans prove it, but we have seen the 49ers do it, and we haven't really seen the Colts do it. So we'll see. We'll just kind of see.
All right. So and when I say outside linebackers that I included outside linebackers in the non-traditional edge sense, not the like 4-3 stand up weak side backer. Like that's 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. Like I was counting that guy in the linebacker crew. And now let me ask you this: if we just said pass rush, like we know the Titans are the best rushing defense, we know that, and we know the Colts with their tandem inside solid against the run, but the question then becomes who's got the best pass rush.
I still think Titans.
Still think Titans? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that's where I think the Texans could jump all the way to 2 or maybe even have one of the best pass rushes if everything hits.
Yeah. I mean, I think number 2, I think is their limit because I don't think they have.
Okay.
I don't think they have enough to be number 1. And I think they are still a year away from maybe a couple of drafts, free agent signings to be able to get to that spot. You know, I think they're going to be, if you're talking strictly pass rush, I still think Titans. I do not believe in, I think Josh Allen is a quality player. I do not get the hype around Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker as far as a pass rushing duo. And based on what we saw last year, I don't know how anybody could do it. I feel like Braden, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
A couple sacks against Dennis Daly doesn't count.
Yeah. I feel like at a point, it's like these people have confirmation bias because whenever Trayvon Walker got a sack in preseason, the Twitter was all aflutter with the analysts who said, this is why we told you Trayvon Walker would be good and should be taking over Aiden Hutchinson. But season long, you didn't hear from those losers ever again. And I feel like it took a while for the Josh Allen, we were right to come out after a Dennis Daly game. I don't know. I just kind of like, I still think that what Vrabel can do and what Shane Bowen can do and what the defensive line can do, specifically Autry, Simmons, and Tart, as far as how the defense could be formed around it, I still think they're the better pass rushing team.
I like to think that that's true, especially if you get full on. Harold Landry. I think that's.
I think if you even get listen, I am not a Harold Landry guy. I have never been. I mean, I like him. He's good, but he's not the elite pass rusher. I think you're going to get like a 2019 Harold Landry where it's pretty good, but not great. And you're kind of wondering when he's going to take that next step. It's kind of like, I'll say this. I think he's going to play all year. I think he's going to be healthy. And I think they're going to probably use him as much as they usually do. Maybe not as much, but pretty close. But Harold Landry is just going to be Harold Landry. And he is an average player at a premium position, in my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting. I think we could when we go into camp preview mode and we start talking depth chart. I think that'll be an interesting conversation. I was looking at Trayvon Walker's game log here. The guy had 5 tackles for loss the entire season. 5 tackles for loss. 5 times he tackled someone behind the line of scrimmage. That one major big sack was, of course, when they blew out the Titans, and the Titans were in pass. They were so far behind they had to pass the ball every play, and he was going against Dennis Daly. He had 1 sack against the Giants, and he had 1 sack in week 1 against a terrible offensive line and a bad quarterback team in Washington. He added a half a sack against Denver. So 3.5 sacks and 5 tackles for loss from the number 1 overall pick. Hit the quarterback 10 times last year.
And by the way, I mean, he was playing like 80 to 90% of the defensive snaps until towards the end of the year.
Yes.
He got inactive because of an injury, and then they kind of started trailing him off a little bit. And then
he played a lot against the Titans in week 18.
Yeah, he played 84% then. He bounced back up, but
No, you're
Just
right.
saying, he played
You're
a
right.
lot of snaps, so it's not well, maybe he didn't have the opportunity. No,
So
he's just not that good.
So what's funny about what I really enjoy about this exercise, you start to see some like concepts formulating about the division, and we'll get to that in just a second. But let's do linebackers here because I think the Colts are clearly the best collection of
Yep,
like
have 'em,
traditional
for
linebackers
sure.
by a country mile with Leonard and Franklin and Okiki and Speed and all these guys. I think it's they're number one. I think there's an interesting debate between Houston and Jacksonville. Again, there's a theme here. Interesting debate between Houston and Jacksonville. I would have the Titans as the last place set of linebackers. I think it's their weakest area on the team. I really like Azeez Al-Shaair, but after that, there's nothing trustworthy on the team. I think Pro Football Focus had him as the 29th collection of linebackers. They had the Colts at number 8. They had Jacksonville at 18, Houston at 26. I think Houston and Jacksonville are closer than that, but I think Tennessee is the worst, and I do think the Colts are the best.
I agree with Colts are the best. I think Texans are the worst.
Okay.
Denzel Perryman, yeah, good luck with that guy. Good luck with Denzel Perryman as your starting linebacker. Christian Kirksey backs him up. You have Henry To'oTo'o back there as well. Corey Littleton, Christian Harris. These names do not strike fear into the hearts of men everywhere. And listen, this comes from a Titans fan. I think for me, it comes down to I think the Jaguars and Titans are the two guys closest in the second and third, and then Texans are clearly last. I really like Azeez Al-Shaair.
I know. I do too.
And I do not like Monty Rice, but I love Mike Vrabel. So it's kind of, for me, it's kind of like D'Amico Ryans in the defensive line and the pass rush and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. I mean, Mike Vrabel just does stuff with people that you can't believe. I mean, he had, Dr. Gibby out there. He had Dylan Cole out there. Like, I guess you could say Foyesade Alukin is good, but Devin Lloyd, is he good?
I love Devin Lloyd.
But is he good? Just because you
Lloyd.
love him doesn't mean he's good.
I think he's pretty good. So here's my I think we need to, because I think all three of them are kind of the same here.
Yeah.
Because I could, if Denzel Perryman, if he plays all 17 games, is better than anything the Titans have potentially. Christian Kirksey last year had 125 tackles, 3 sacks, played every single game. Christian Harris had 75 tackles. No, and I'm right. What I'm saying is the same credit that I agree with you on, that I think Vrabel coaches them up. I'm going to say the same thing about D'Amico Ryans, who plays the linebacker position. There is more experience, far more experience, and more upside with the Texans linebacking core, in my opinion, than the Titans linebacking core. Now, the Jags, I love Devin Lloyd, but I don't know about the rest of the group. So I think they're all pretty close, with the Colts like a distant first here.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of like the offensive line talk that we had the other day. It's like the Colts were clearly the best offensive line. Then you get into it and you kind of talk about it and you're just talk it out and you're like, well, I can kind of see the Titans are the worst, or I kind of see the Titans are the second best. But it's clearly Colts number one. And look at, by the way, to go on back to Denzel Perryman, the last time he's played a full 17 games was a full season of games was never. He has never played. And he is 30, about to turn 31, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he'll be 31 by the end of this year. I think that's a lot of. I think like the Texans this is the weird part of it's kind of like the Titans too. There's a weird part of their defense around this linebacking core that's like a lot of hope and a lot of youth, but nothing concrete. There's not a concrete player on either of these teams as far as what happened at the inside linebacker position. Like a good elite, you can rely on week in and week out player.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Even David Long technically wasn't the reliable player, but you could, when he was in the game, you're talking a difference maker. Now, I think that Azeez Al-Shaair will be that guy, and we have seen him be that guy with the San Francisco 49ers. And I assume, because Mike Vrabel is the coach, we'll see that guy here in Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, like, you can almost just put them all at one. You could do Colts at 1 and then put everybody at 2 and just be, I think it's all 3-way tie.
I think if you had Vrabel coaching Perriman, Kirksey, Littleton, Harris, I would feel much more comfortable about that than Jack Gibbons. And as the number 3 and the number 4, it's not about Al-Shaair. I really believe in Al-Shaair as well. It's more about like you're banking on Monty Rice playing 17 games as your number 2 middle linebacker, and then what after that? So my key, and Perriman's going into his 9th year. You're right, he's 30 years old, but he had 150 tackles 2 years ago. He started 15 games 2 years ago. I'm not saying he's not going to miss, let's say, 3 or 4 games, 5 games maybe even, but I'd still rather have the other 12 from him. So here's one big overarching takeaway from doing this exercise, because we'll rank all 4 defenses as a whole now that we've kind of done our rankings. And it's really interesting and kind of hard to do. But what's interesting is I could argue that the Texans are better than Jacksonville at all 3 levels of the defense. Maybe it's close, maybe you disagree, and that's okay. But I could argue that the pass rush and the defensive line is just a little tiny fraction a bit better Houston than Jacksonville. Secondary, we just talked about it, maybe fraction of a difference better than Jacksonville. And maybe the linebackers, you might lean Jacksonville, but I could still argue that Houston's close. We just said they're all about the same. So if Houston is better with DeMeco Ryans as their head coach at every level than Jacksonville, to me, that screams problems for Jacksonville, and it screams the Texans are going to steal a bunch of games this year. Not a bunch, but like 3 or 4 games, because their defense will be
make
very
some
well
noise.
coached.
And they tried their best to make noise under Lovie Smith. I mean, you got to remember, Lovie Smith was having a couple of these players that now DeMeco Ryans is going to get his hands on playing out of their minds, playing above their pay grade, playing above their weight class. I mean, the Texans were in some games last year. It's ridiculous.
It's the NFL.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous that's how it was. I mean, almost every game you're like, man, the Texans are still in this game. It's the fourth quarter. Yeah. I mean, they would lose in hilarious fashion. But now we got DeMeco Ryans coming in, and now you need to put him on notice. I agree with you, but this is also why I don't think the Jags are going to be that good. I agree with you is that they're going to have a much harder schedule than they had last year, not only across their actual schedule against other opponents outside the AFC South. I actually think the AFC South this year is better than last year. And they did nothing to really improve their team outside of lucking into Calvin Ridley. like pretty much, I mean, that is the only new addition right now with the Jacksonville Jaguars is Calvin Ridley.
They drafted who they drafted? They drafted the Georgia tackle, right? Broderick Jones in the first round. Is that right?
Anton Harrison.
Harrison at Oklahoma. Okay, yeah. And right now they're planning on having to play him a lot because of the Cam Robinson problem. But so if I said defense overall,
it's Titans number 1.
I think you take the Titans number 1 because they have the best defensive line and the best secondary. They have the worst linebackers, but then the Colts have the worst secondary. And if the Titans are better at 2 positions than the Colts, then
right.
I think you got to lean Titans 1. The question, I think it's Colts 2, because their defensive line is number 2 and their linebackers are number 1, which means their front 7 is probably close to the Titans.
I think it's Texans number 2, Jags 3, Colts 4.
Wow.
The Colts' the best players are players that stop the run. Like DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Shaq Leonard, if that's what we're going to call him, Darius Leonard, and then what's the other guy's name? The other Colts linebacker.
Franklin or Okeke?
I was thinking of Okikere, but he's gone. It's EJ Speed. EJ Speed is the other guy in line, and Zaire is the other one as well.
What a great name.
They all kind of only really stop the run and tackle. Like, I know tackling is very important, but the pass rush, I feel like, is not there. And I feel like if you're going to be a good defense, you have to have some semblance of a pass rush. And I feel like the Titans, Texans, and Jags all have semblances of pass rush with much better secondaries. And it's much, much, much better secondaries than the Colts.
Everybody is.
Yeah.
So give me your final order. Total, all defenses, overall defense in the AFC South. Titans 1.
On paper, it's Titans, Jaguars, Texans, Colts. But my prediction is that it's going to end up being Titans, Texans, Jaguars, Colts.
Man, I'm so torn on this Colts thing because I like the defensive line a little bit more than you do. But I totally agree. I totally agree with you on the
line is
secondary.
that much better.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you were talking about with Trevor Lawrence and the backups, quarterbacks, and all that kind of stuff. The defensive line is that, and the two linebackers are not that much better than what you generate in a pass rush and what you generate out of your secondary, in my opinion.
Here's what I think ultimately I took away from doing this exercise is that even if the secondary, even if the defense is thin for the Titans and defense is difficult to predict year over year statistically from a regression progression standpoint, that the Tennessee Titans should still be the best defensive team in the AFC South pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing I took away is that there's a chance that these are three of the worst defenses, the other three teams, three of the worst defenses in the AFC. And It doesn't mean there's not some good players in there, but they're three of the worst defenses in the AFC. Because I would go Titans, Colts, Texans, Jags. But to your point, I like the Colts pass rush a little bit more than you do. If the linebackers are limited to just sort of playing the run and the front line is limited to just playing the run, then I agree with you. The Colts are at the back.
And can we say something real quick about because Mike's big thing has been depth. Here's what I've learned through this exercise is that it's an AFC South epidemic. It is not just the Titans. If you go look at these other, they may have better high-end starters at certain positions than the Titans. But if you really go look at these rosters right now, let me tell you something. If the Jaguars they were the number 2 healthiest team last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars were. If they experience just like a fraction of the bad injury like the Titans and Colts have had over the last 2 seasons, and really you could maybe throw in the Texans, some of this bad injury luck, they're in trouble. They're in so much trouble, it's ridiculous. But that's like that for every team in the AFC South, and I bet you'd be hard pressed to find I'd say about 10 teams I think if you could find 10 teams in the NFL that have really, really strong, considerable, great elite depth, I would have to give you maybe $10.
The entire nature of the sport is designed to remove your depth. That's the whole nature of the salary cap and the 53 and the whole thing. I will say this: there's not many. I mean, Simmons is a better defensive tackle than anybody else, even if the Colts have 2 good ones. So he's still better at the high end. The only 2 names that I look at in the entire division that I would say are clearly high-end elite talents that are better than the Titans are probably Tyson Campbell and Derek Stingley at corner.
Yeah.
Will Anderson potentially as a pass rusher, and Leonard maybe at linebacker, and then I like Lloyd and as better than anything the Titans have, but he's not an elite player. So like Kevin Byard is the best safety in the division, but by a pretty wide margin. So like I don't
know if it's pretty wide, but I do agree that he's a base safety.
The point is that even when you talk about high-end talent, you're talking about maybe 2 or 3 guys. Now, the reason the Texans are interesting is that they may have the best corner and the best pass rusher in the entire division, both in their first and second year, and coached by D'Amico Ryans. That's what's interesting is Stingley is going to be an elite number 1 corner, and Anderson is going to be an elite number 1 pass rusher. The question is how fast,
right?
And can they fill in the gaps around them? So I think with you, like what you said, the Texans may start 4th or 3rd or at the bottom, and then by the end of the year, will probably work their way up and be potentially number 2 in the division. So I can get on board with that. Okay. Otherwise, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, stackingtheinbox.com, F-Words Pod. Make sure you check all of those different products out. Of course, Sinkers, proud sponsor here of the show. Bluegrass Beverages up there in Hendersonville and Goodlettsville in that area up there. Even older than Sinkers. I think from the 70s they've been up there serving, and Sinkers is since the 80s. But 2 locally owned and operated liquor stores here in Nashville, and of course the Kingston Group as well. Make sure you remember them. SEC Media Days descends upon our city. I would avoid Broadway and downtown at all costs next weekend. That is for sure. Or next week, I should say.
That's I would suggest it's avoiding it for forever.
I don't disagree with you. Especially now, how about this? They put the event at the Grand Hyatt downtown, which is right next to
Center?
No, or the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Omni, while the bridge is not working. The bridge on Broadway, you know what I'm talking about, that takes you down, is closed.
What in the world?
So we're gonna have like 800 media members and every SEC team and all the sponsors and everybody's going to be there, and they're not even going to be able to get to the hotel.
That's insane. That's crazy.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I do want to piggyback off what you guys were talking about, Mike's tweet with Joe Milton and Anthony Richardson is garbage. How dare you compare him to Anthony Richardson? Actually, he's the next Anthony Richardson. Is my favorite Vol Twitter thing. But here, I'm going to piggyback off that and sort of make a different prediction. I think Joe Milton he's going to be one of the 5 quarterbacks that's going to be here in town. The other ones are Will Rogers, Mississippi State, Jaden Daniels, LSU, KJ Jefferson, 3 stars, 3 veterans. And then it's Spencer Rattler and Joe Milton, guys that we think are good, but we're not sure. Certainly a statement by the coaches bringing them. A statement by Heupel bringing Joe Milton for sure. Like, hey, we believe in this guy. We think he's going to be great, blah, 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 blah. He is going to wow people next week for 2 very important reasons. People haven't been around him in Arkansas and in College Station and in Gainesville. They haven't been around him, right? They don't know enough about him. He's going to wow people because he's going to be the size of the Batman building, and they're going to write the articles that he just towers over every other human being, and that he is an extremely bright and dynamic and interesting person. He's
been around for forever. I think he's about as old as I am.
He's got 3 master's degrees. Yes. He's got a PhD in second string quarterbacking. He is very, very good dude, very likable, very smart, very much like Hendon Hooker in that sense. Both of those things are going to be written ad nauseum next week. Oh, I'm so impressed by Joe Milton, the person, which is great. It's just great. I'm so impressed with Joe Milton's size, none of which has anything to do if he can hit a crossing route over the linebacker underneath the safety on 3rd and 7 in a critical situation. So.
Yeah. I can't wait for the hype train and all that kind of stuff. That comes with SEC media days. What's the big thing on the agenda, or the big thing that you're really looking forward when you go to SEC media days?
The agenda that I'm looking for and what other people are doing is probably not the same thing. I think Kirby Smart's going to come in there really pissed off, and I don't think it's the right approach. I think he should come in there and just say, look, we're dealing with some stuff in our program. We've got to figure it out. It's my responsibility. Just kind of play it calm. But I think he's going to come in pissed off for greatness and screaming and yelling about the media and outside noise and how everyone's wrong and my kids are disrespected. And I think he's using it to try to motivate his team.
Kids
I guess
that are getting sued today.
Right. People died. Like, come on, Kirby. Like,
yeah.
It's like, and I'm not even talking about the assault stuff. Like, I'm just talking about, you can't. That last year they claimed disrespect, and I sat and talked to Stetson Bennett, and you could see it dripping off every word that he was upset and resented the disrespect. They weren't picked last year to win the SEC. They weren't picked number 1 in the nation. They had a bunch more talent back. They had their coordinator, their quarterback back, and I was fine with Kirby Smart playing that card because I actually thought they were underrated. I think you and I did a show where I said I think Georgia's underrated in August of last year. None of that's true this year. They're preseason number 1. They don't have a quarterback coming back. They don't have their coordinator. They don't have as many stars on defense. And 2 players died in a car accident, and they're getting sued because they have a problem with their program speeding and driving and drinking and racing at 2 a.m. Like you can't play the disrespect card this year. And I think he's gonna try. Saban, I think he's gonna get up there and NIL portal. Game is going in a direction we don't want it to go. Blah, 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 blah. It is what it is. He'll be asked about his quarterback, though, a lot, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's that. I think Clark Lee's going to give his optimistic robot fullback speech. I think it'll be what it is. I think Hugh Freeze is also one of the biggest storylines. I think Baby Billy's going to get up there and preach for about 18 minutes. And I think the over-under on Jesus mentions is about 3.5 in his opening remarks. I might take the under, but he is going to get up there and preach. He's going to be asked about paying players at Ole Miss. He's going to be asked about all kinds of nonsense stuff I don't actually care about. What I care about is creepy behavior as a high school coach 25 years ago in Memphis. What I care about is DMing a sexual assault victim during an active investigation while the head coach at Liberty. Like, I care about stuff that he's probably not going to get asked about. And frankly, it's hard to do that. You can't ask like,
you gonna ask him about Malik Willis?
I absolutely could do that. That would be very easy if I can get around. But again,
a good little clip to see, why he thinks that Malik Willis struggled, last year.
Yeah, I gotta word that one carefully. It'd be sort of like if I was going to do that, because you have to do it in the big room.
Yeah,
and you have to. That's the one that's on TV and in front of everybody, and they're trying to focus on the team, right? It's hard to ask about another pro player from Liberty, but if I was going to ask that, it would have to be something like, Hugh, what is it about Malik Willis? Like, what gives you confidence in Malik Willis's ability to develop into a pro quarterback? Something like that. Like, why is it that you think he'll develop into a pro quarterback?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Because Hugh Freeze said out loud about Malik Willis that he doesn't coach quarterbacks. He said it. I heard him say it on an interview that the rest of the country heard too. I think it was Sirius XM, and he was like, this was during the January draft process of Malik Willis. And he's like, oh, I don't coach the quarterbacks. I draw up the plays and that's it.
Yeah.
What?
Yep. How it is, I guess.
So I think Baby Billy's going to be a big storyline. I think Kirby's angry. I think Jimbo Fisher's pissed off too. I think he's in there like all, pissing and moaning. I think Lane Kiffin doesn't say a single word. I think Shane Beamer's going to talk some shit, which I think will be fun.
Yeah,
I like Carolina.
Let's do it. Let's get some shit talking going.
He's bringing a kicker, by the way, which is a punter, which is great. That's pretty fun. Otherwise, I think a lot of people are going to write about Joe Milton and how big he is and how smart he is, which is great. Those are great things to write about. But I none of that tells us anything about what he's going to be able to do this year. So
it'll be interesting. Be interesting to see what happens.
The real story that I'm going to try to work on next, because I did communication and leadership last year, was a big one for me that I focused on. I'm working on officiating this year. That's the one I'm working on. I think the officiating in the SEC has been questionable the last couple of seasons.
As questionable as the Nashville Soccer Club's officiating last night at Geodis Park.
I watched the game. I think the calls were right. You can't. Dan Lovitz shoved the guy. Dan Lovitz two-handed shoved the guy.
I'm not saying that every call was wrong, but I think there was a lot of calls early on that were a little ticky-tacky.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Hani got pushed around a little bit too. So it was not a good night at Geodis, just in general. No. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. We're going to have a lot of great coverage for you from SEC Media Days next week. So stay tuned. And then after that, the week after that, I think the Titans report and we're ready to go. So got a lot of stuff to do. Sinkers, Kingston Group, Stack in the Inbox, F Words Pod, all the other great shows across the 440 Sports Network, all that shit, as Zach says, about our really hard
Check out
work.
All that shit that they do over there.
Really hard work that a lot of people are doing and putting in. So check it out. Thank you, Zach, for hanging out. My name is Braden Gall. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.